It is April 10th, 2024. I'm here with Tim Kipfer, and this is our first ever distance recording, so I'm really excited about this. Tim, where are you?
Right now, I am in Greater Noida, India, which is in the capital region near Delhi, India.
So, Tim, you're also one of our first alumni on the podcast that doesn't work at Sattler. I've interviewed a couple of alumni who sort of stayed in the Boston area, and so it's been easy to interview them. But can you just tell me a little bit about yourself, your story, what you're about, and some of your passions?
Sure, I can do that. Yeah, so I am married to a beautiful wife, Gina, and we have 4 amazing children. My oldest, Ezekiel, is 8 years old, and I have 3 daughters that come after that. So I was born in Virginia, and then my family spent 10 years in Kenya, Africa, during my growing up years. Came back when I was 15, and so got to know the U.S. mainly after I was 15 years old. But anyways, yeah, after getting married, we continued living in Virginia for a couple of years, and then came to Sattler College and had 2 children at the time. 2 of my children were born in Boston. It's just a really, really awesome time period of our life. And then after graduating, moved to India here to do business ministry. So that's kind of us in a nutshell.
Yeah, and our lives kind of interconnected a ton while you were here in weird ways. I think our wives are related through, I won't try to quote the exact relationships, I think second cousins. And then Tim and I were involved in where you lived in this big place called Malden Towers, and we met there and did a lot of interesting things together. So I feel like you're a distant friend. So I love having a chance to hear more about what you're doing. And I'd love to hear, Tim, I know you're one of the few people I've met that showed up to Sattler probably with a pretty intense vision for what you wanted to see happen afterwards. And I'd love to just hear you talk about a little bit of the arc of your story about, having this vision, showing up to Boston for 4 years, and then I know that there were other opportunities, other doors open in your life, but really choosing to pursue what you had in mind going to India. And I'd love to hear you talk about that experience and how it all came to fruition.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So when I was 19 years old, my life changed drastically. My mother passed away from cancer, and it really shattered my world completely. And all the things at that point in my life that were really important to me, like my social image and cars. I was into racing and fixing up cars. All of a sudden, all these things just kind of lost their glory, and I was trying to figure out, what's important in life. What do I really want? And so over that time, God really got a hold of my life and brought a lot of revival. I decided that, the things that really matter are the things that are going to last into eternity. So that's when I started really feeling called to share my faith, to share Jesus, to evangelism. We got on the streets and just talked to people and spent a lot of time doing that with friends. And that became kind of the overarching calling that I felt God had given on my life. And so, during my teen years and everything, I was fairly radical in that. And then after I got married, actually it was still pretty radical. I told Gina on one of our dates that she has to be willing to live in a trailer park with me if she wants to marry me. I didn't know why, but I just needed that level of commitment to the hard life. We never actually lived in a trailer park. It would have been fine if it would have, but anyways, after we got married, though, I got a little bit sidetracked, I would say, where started a company, an automotive repair shop. It was really interesting, trying to make a lot of money. I had a lot of fun. Again, started getting more into cars and fixing them up. And I'm just kind of settling in, building up my house of property. And I felt myself, I knew I was kind of lapsing into lukewarmness again in my Christian life and materialism, which is exactly the things that I've been running away from since I was 19. And so there came a point in life when I was like, I need to make a break with this somehow. I need to make some sort of big change. I need to sell some things. And so that's when I heard about Sattler College. And I had been looking into some other things as well, like going into some training, some other places, but nothing very serious. But I heard about Sattler College, and it sounded really exciting because the mission of Sattler College to prepare people for impact in the kingdom, and what I saw going on with the churches there in Boston, I was like, this looks exactly like the leap that I want to take. So that's why we decided to start thinking about this. And coming to Sattler College, I knew exactly what I wanted to do afterwards. I knew that the most important thing in life was making disciples, planting new church fellowships, and that's what my life was all about. So I basically came to Sattler, just to become better equipped for kingdom impact in those ways. And since you guys were making the promises that this is what you're going to do, I took you up on that. And that's why we moved to Boston and dove into college. And I could say more about my experience at Sattler, but I'll just say that my experience was that he delivered on that promise. And for me, keeping that focus the whole way through college, and then it, becoming more specific to India is an interesting story too. I hadn't really have a specific place in mind. I don't know if you want me to keep talking on that.
Yeah, I actually was gonna ask about when did the specific like geographic location sort of become a reality? And I actually think a lot of people here could learn from you, because I think people have a general desire, but to operationalize the desire is, I think there's a lot of red herrings that can show up and things like that in your story. So I'd love to hear sort of the desire meets the team, meets the people, and all of that.
Yeah. So there were a couple different things that I considered Uganda or city in the U.S. or something like that. But my younger brother, Titus, he's a year and a half younger than I. He's here with us. He had been wanting to move to India for about 8 years, or at least he had been, back and forth to India visiting. And so, he was a pretty big influencer for me. We met at an Airbnb in Baltimore one time. This was, maybe halfway through my time in college. And he really tried convincingly to show me why India is because it's one of the most unreached parts of the world, why it makes sense that it's the most urgent. And I really did believe that too. And so we prayed about it, and I still remember it was like on the rooftop of this Airbnb in Baltimore. And then the next day, someone called up Titus. It was someone who worked at Google in California. He's a Christian. He said, feels called to go back to India. He heard that Titus is interested in India, so he would put a team together. And so just that happening the next day made it feel like it was a pointer from God. But it was also, very much in line with my convictions of what was most urgent and, where the greatest needs are in the world. So I decided to pursue it from there. And then, trying to find these little pointers along the way to confirm that was something that I did as well. And not everything was easy, and there were even some people who questioned whether it was a good idea. But there was just a settledness in my heart. And then, Joe Wine family from Boston, who were really good friends with Gina and I, same fellowship together, working together. They were like, how can we support Tim and Gina? Oh, maybe we could just come along with them. And so they did. And so, the three of us families became the core team then. And we did, I focused my capstone and everything on doing team building and preparing the team for moving to India, which was really helpful.
Yeah, I'd love to chat a little bit about that, because I think one of the things that a lot of people are questioning, I think especially in the United States right now, is like the value of 4 years of college or education in general. And I'm always trying to navigate these conversations with a young person, and really, I kind of have this internal deal with myself. And if I hear what someone wants to do, I wouldn't want to invite them to be like, hey, come to Boston. It's perfect for you, because it's definitely not perfect for everyone. Like the right decision, I would say. But would you say that, I don't want to like sell the Sattler product here too hard, but doing academic work before embarking on your journey, have you found that to be generally helpful at this point? I know you haven't been over there tons of time, but there's sort of a mismatch between the academics and then the field work, so to speak. Have you been able to see any ties between the two there?
Yeah. So, even I would say being in Boston and living in the context we did made it even easier to start putting into practice things I was learning. Even while I was in college, like there was no need to wait till after college, start using the knowledge that I was gaining. And so my major was biblical and religious studies. And so I learned a ton about the Bible, or a ton about history and, how these movements and things have happened in the past. All of it has been really valuable knowledge, I would say. But also a big part of it was just learning how to be a disciplined person. I would say a lot of the small successes that I've had in business and in life since starting at Sattler College have been due to just being forced to become a very disciplined person, and being in the right environment where it was really encouraged, where there was accountability, where there's other people who are outpacing me. It was a really good environment just to like develop my own self. And so learning how to manage your own self was probably one of the most valuable things I learned, along with the knowledge. But yeah, I would say even in business, a lot of things that I learned just managing time, getting projects done, was hugely valuable for business and getting things done in business. I did take some business classes as well that were helpful, but yeah. So I would say that, yeah, it very much has been helpful.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear a little bit about your day-to-day in India. From what I'm not spying on you or anything. So yeah, you guys are running a business, and I think that's a big part of your life. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what you do throughout the day and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I get up in the morning, and after a couple of other things, language classes included, I head to the office, which is actually ended up being just up the street. We live in what's called a society, where there's a bunch of villas or houses, and there's an apartment, big tower, out by the end of the society with office buildings. So I get to just walk down the street to the office, and there's where we're Prosynergy set up. And yeah, we have two companies actually. One is a digital marketing company. The other is a bookkeeping company. And I'm basically solely involved in the bookkeeping company at this point, at least in operationally. So yeah, I'll go there and work. We have 2 Indian employees, so they get to teach us how to eat good Indian food, and they're really, really smart people as well. So yeah, we have some good camaraderie in the office. I work online, and we're doing work for American companies, allowing American companies to source their work here, and go back. So basically, I have a full 5-day work week, and we started the business immediately after arriving, and it's pretty much been sustaining us and the different ministry things we want to do here. So
That's amazing. And can you spell the name? And I think I know how to spell it, but what's the name of the company again?
So it's called Prosynergy is the main brand, PRO, and Synergy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can you just find it online if you look it up? I'm assuming.
Yeah. So you can look up Prosynergy. You can look at Prosynergy Bookkeeping and see our website.
And are you guys looking for new clients just in case somebody's listening out there?
That's actually the main. Most of my time is spent in trying to get new clients. So we're very much in the startup growth phase, and there's so much good talent here that we could scale it up big. So yeah, if there's anybody looking for bookkeeping work or digital marketing, look us up.
And yeah, I think that's Prosynergy. Well, hopefully we can help spread the word about that. And I want to give you guys a shout out. I won't mention the person or the company, but I know somebody who is working with you guys, and they were singing your praises the other morning. I had a meeting, so I just want to give you a good shout out there. You can probably guess who it was, but we won't get into it. And then, yeah, the other piece that I'd love to just chat about with you is like the finances behind it all. I know that there's when I look at your story, I really want to make it possible to make more people make the decisions that you made. I think there is a really big, like, how is this ever going to happen? How am I going to finance this and sustain it? And, you know, we took initiative this year called Entrustment, where we basically told students, hey, we're not going to bill you in tuition. Right now, we still are charging like room and board. And we say, if you can figure out housing for yourself, you can get here. And then afterwards, we want you guys to make some really radical life decisions. And we're praying that some people, you know, maybe take less lucrative career decisions and make that feasible. But has God been faithful in the finances? And is it scary? Is that part of like how do you look at the decision making there, and how you think about all that? I know that's kind of a big question, but I know that's actually, I think, a main threat as to what keeps people back and keeps them from taking some of the riskier moves in life.
Yeah, it's a good question. So for my family, because we were able to sell some things in Virginia, wasn't quite as tight for us as we ended college. And I also did have some help and some scholarships. So I really appreciate that. It was very affordable. Coming to India, you know, that it was definitely a leap of faith when we were looking at, okay, so we're going to start a business and move to India at the same time, and that business needs to provide for us. Just doesn't usually work out that amazing. But God did come through on that, and there was a big contract we were able to get with the company that was sourcing work to us, where we got to India and we were able to have plenty of work right away and actually provide for ourselves. So there was, God definitely provided. Another family got into a tight financial situation a couple times, and just God came through every time. So if you if you, I do believe God provides his work. You have a vision, if someone has a vision from God for something, he's not just going to let them sit. And so that's the faith that I have, and so far been taken care of.
Yeah. And then I'd love to hear you talk. You don't have to be an expert in this, but I know a lot of people sort of face this. What's your thoughts on like going somewhere like like your life path, going back to where you came from, like establishing yourself in Virginia, choosing somewhere where your passport somewhere domestically in the US versus sort of doing a international venture here. Do you have any guiding thoughts on like how people can sort out making those decisions on stay in the US or go back to what I'm familiar with or go somewhere new? And I think we were even chatting the other day about your time horizon on how long you want to stay. Like, is your plan to be buried there? Is your plan to develop leadership there and then hightail it out once it's developed? I know there's that's kind of a negative way to put it, but I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about all this thought into how to think about where to go and how long to stay and or to stay permanently and all those. I don't think there's a right answer, so you can ramble as much as you want.
Yeah. I mean, for us, we don't really know. Life is pretty uncertain here. We don't know how long we can be here, but we're here indefinitely as long as we can be, and God wants us here. So that was actually fairly freeing decision to make, because then we don't need to store anything in the U.S. and we just, this is our home. And with our whole team having that attitude, I think it was a strength that we had. And I would recommend if you feel like God might be calling you somewhere, just to take that step and not be too quick to like put a time boundary on it. Just go and find where God wants you next. But as far as like making the decision on whether to stay, go back home or something else or go abroad, I don't have a lot of wisdom on that. I do think that if we are really aligned with God's heart, seeking to do his will, if that's like the one thing in our life that we care about, then we can often go after the desires of our heart, the things that we want that are exciting. We're excited about doing God's will, then go after what you're excited about. And I think you'll continue in God's will. So if you're excited about going somewhere, a foreign country, you're just trying something new, you like adventure, it's great. If you, have a real vision for your home area, that's great too. That's my thoughts on the matter.
No, I'm laughing because it's like, well, and if you don't like adventure, then just stay put. No, I'm just kidding.
There is the whole thing of like, we should think, logically about the needs in the world, and, that should be foremost on our heart. How do we solve the big problems in the world? And so where are those needs? And, if there's this analogy where, there's a log that you have to pick up, and if there's like 100 people on one side and only one on the other, then why don't you go join the person, that's by himself to lift that side? So I think it's probably good to factor that in as well.
And then I'd love to hear about just your sort of cultural dynamics. Have you managed to kind of feel at home? I know that you probably feel like kind of like a sojourner, but I know the feeling having traveled a lot. And have you managed to create a little bit of a home-likeness there in the short amount of time you've been there?
Yeah, it's interesting you asked that, because just this morning we were coming back from a small group meeting, and we were just talking about it, how that this feels like home. Definitely feels like home now. There's something that shifts with time We've been here 7-8 months now, and it takes some time for it to feel like home. But I would say for myself, it felt like home pretty quickly. Growing up in Kenya for 10 years, I sort of feel at home when I'm in a foreign place. It's weird. Not the same for my wife exactly, but I feel in my element when I'm out of it or something odd like that.
Yeah, my wife and I talk about that a lot, where I think she would describe herself as a homebody, and I'm like a homebody for maybe 3 weeks, and then after week 3, I'm like, let's go, let's do something, let's find something new. And no, I get it. And then I want to revisit something you mentioned, just because I think it's interesting, and we think about it a lot here. Is the 2 words, discipline and discipleship, related words, at least in the dictionary. And one of the things that I am always need to be careful of is I came from, my background, I came from like a military where discipline is like almost an idol. You could put it up there with like the levels of disciplines that they require of you, and then the idea is that those will propel you through any situation. It's like, if you can establish disciplines in the small things and in hard environments, then every environment becomes feasible to endure and persevere through. So I think there's totally something about that. And then in terms of how to map that onto a large swath of people is something I still haven't quite nailed down as to like how much discipline to prescribe on every kind of person. I'll even prescribing different disciplines for men and women, for people who come from or like to wake up in the morning versus who don't like to wake up in the morning. And then just thinking about that in terms of church life and things like that. Are there any disciplines, either spiritual ones or other disciplines, that you think are worth continuing to cultivate? It doesn't have to be in the college environment, but just in general in life, are there disciplines that you think are really worth investing in and into yourself? And a lot of times that's why I make the case like, hey, if you struggle with cultivating these in your environment, then choose an environment that's more likely to cultivate it for you, which is, a pitch for the college environment in general. But I'd love to hear you talk about some of those disciplines and maybe how you think about it personally right now.
Yeah. I think about the disciplines, in terms of like, these are means that we're using to become more like Jesus. So, looking at what Jesus did, spending a lot of time in prayer seems to be one of the primary things that he would get away. And even with solitude, he would get away from everything, from the noise and the hustle, and just spend long amounts of time, in the mountain or during the night in prayer and, communicating with the Father. And so I think that those, that Jesus did are especially important. But then, like, for different people, I think different things are just going to resonate more. And sometimes for one person, something might work really well. Getting up really early and, reading and journaling, reading the Bible and journaling. Maybe journaling works really good for somebody. Maybe someone else just likes to quiet and meditate. Sit cross-legged on the floor. There's so many different like ways that you can keep it kind of exciting if you're interested in like, what are the ways that, the things that I can do and times of the day or different rhythms I can build in my life that help me keep my mind on God and become more like Jesus. I think it was good for me to be pushed in those at college, just to have someone say, well, these are really good disciplines and we're going to try to do these. Was really good for me. So I'm the type of person that I think responded, or it worked for me. um, to basically have these set of disciplines that we're trying to do and trying to track. That was good for me. And honestly, after college, it's hard to keep it going because I didn't have the structure anymore, and I kind of miss it. So that's just my experience, but I know that's not everybody's experience.
Yeah. So one of the things, maybe I'll ask about, trying to think exactly how to frame this question. One of the things that I think is a discipline that maybe a lot of people don't think about as a discipline or maybe it's a habit, regularly forcing yourself to interact with people who you wouldn't necessarily be interacting with. Some people call it, it could be evangelism, or it's just forming friendships outside your typical circles. Has that been part of your life, is like learning how to spend your time, especially with other people that it's not normal for me to go approach this person in life and have them over for dinner, or, do a study with them or something like that? How has that come out in your life? Because Tim was part of a club here called the M29 Club. We don't have to get into exactly what that was, but I viewed you here as really forming that discipline of like interacting with people a lot more beyond your typical like school circles that are in the city and things like that.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's interesting you ask me because I'm an introvert and actually have a lot of social anxiety, especially when I first came to Sattler College. It was difficult for me, and I'm guessing you saw some changes in the way that I related and my confidence with people. I was a very fearful person, and actually just being in that environment and organizing some of those things with people, working with people, were just because that was my passion. And you can't do anything in life alone.
Right.
You have to learn how to do it with people. So I had to kind of force myself, to be honest, and to get into scary situations and places where I'm really nervous and that sort of thing. But I knew that that's what I wanted, and so I'm willing to do it. I do think it's good, like learning people's skills and how to really listen to other people and care about them and understand other people's emotions. It's emotional intelligence, what you call it, is like a really important skill that I'm still trying to learn. Still have a long ways to go in that one, but yeah.
And then, so I just think that this is more of something I'm thinking about, so I love your feedback on it. I was having a conversation the other day about you're going to get a kick out of this, cities and masculinity, and there was someone that was concerned about raising boys in a city that was basically saying, hey, is it even possible to develop like the correct form of masculinity and femininity in cities? And their hypothesis was that cities are now becoming they're becoming less masculine and more feminine. I won't get into the details about all that, but I'd love to hear you sort of talk about, is it cities, are they in urban environments, is it possible to develop like just a godly view of masculinity and femininity with all that? And then the side conversation to that is that I think that there's sort of an idea that in order to be living out what sort of God's intended order for creation, you should be working in the field with your hands, getting dirty, cutting down trees, being a mechanic, having grease all over your hands. And we were sitting there talking that somehow it feels like it's possible to be developing God's proper order in cities and in the country, but there's also a tendency to run away from some of the hard things that Christ has called us to and pursue comforts. And so there's this balance of trying to make sure your life isn't too comfortable, where you're running away from the very thing that Christ has called us to, is to be fishers of men. So I'd love to hear any thoughts you have on that, to develop my own way to respond to cities and masculinity. It was a completely new question, but it was intriguing to me.
Yeah, that is an intriguing question. I'm not quite sure how to respond to that, to be honest. I don't really know. I'm not sure if I really understand where that question comes from. Although, I mean, I think the view of masculinity, femininity, I said it right there. It's cultivated like in your family, your parents, and your friends and your community. I think influence that a lot. As far as like city versus country, I don't think there's any push either way to like a good understanding or a bad one of it. There was definitely a shift for me from like working with my hands. I've done construction and landscaping and mechanic work, repairing cars. There was a shift, coming to Sattler, working on my computer. Now I work on computers all day long. But I would like to think that I haven't become less of a man through the process. I do think, sometimes it is good. We need to go ground ourselves. Like, we got a little backyard out here where we dig in the dirt, children, and plant some plants and flowers, and that's a good thing. Get your hands dirty sometimes. And too much technology and man-made inventions can be disorienting too. So it's good to get out into nature and everything. But yeah.
So I'm maybe we're approaching around the time where people usually stop listening, so we can start wrapping it up, the conversation here. What's if you could have a burden for the audience or the general people, is there anything that you'd like to leave here, or another way, is there a pearl of wisdom that you remind yourself often that you want to share with anyone listening?
Yeah, I think so. I started off in the podcast talking a little bit about what changed for me when I was 19. And I really do think that moment set the trajectory of my life, what I did with that really painful moment in my life. And, I've had a lot of other painful moments since then. But I think everyone's going to come across something that is devastating in their life. And it's actually many times I think it's a time when God wants to take and clarify your vision and what matters in life and what matters for eternity. And having that really settled in your mind that, I'm not going to go after material things or worldly gain or anything like that, but like I'm going to totally devote my life completely to doing the Father's will and to trying to be like Jesus. Having that settled before you go to college is a really good thing, as people get afraid of young people going to college and they get disoriented and everything. And I think you could find that at college too. It's not like have to have that beforehand, but I do think it was really good for me to have some of those experiences behind me. And you're thinking of going to college or moving across the world or anything like that. That's a pretty core thing to settle. There's nothing more exciting than trying to build God's kingdom, and there's nothing more valuable than laying up treasure in heaven. And so why not have a very exciting life and build the greatest values? Little pitch for kingdom work.
Seek first the kingdom. Yeah. Amen. And then are there any, I love listening to people, what they read, what they follow. Is there anything that that you read or follow or listen to that you like to talk about or recommend to other people? It doesn't have to be a yes.
Yes, I read a book recently by John Mark Comer.
Yep.
It was a new book that came out, and he talked about, I think it was called Practicing the Way, somehow the title is, I think that's the right title. Highly recommend that book, and it was just he has a really great way of talking about spiritual disciplines and just about a life of discipleship in general, in terms that, like, you know, people our age can get and like resonate with. So that's a book that I would recommend. That was pretty influential. It gave me like this boost to like get back to a great schedule of spiritual disciplines again.
He has another book that got passed around in my circles called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, and I recommend that book to some people. Yeah, it's a good book. His writing's really easy to consume, and from my perspective. Yeah. Anything else?
I don't think so. It's been great.
And yeah, so again, if you want to keep up with Tim, I think Prosynergy, just find that on the interwebs. You can look that up. And yeah, Tim, I'm praying that a lot more people that come through Boston have I just think that the scope of your vision has been really inspiring to see you operationalize that and live it out. And I hope that we can figure out how some students can show up here to make similar moves as you did. I know it's an impressive template from my impressive. It's an inspirational template for some people. So I hope more people start thinking a lot more like you. And thanks so much for taking the time to be with us. We don't yet have a podcast title, but someday we might. It's more of just the Sattler podcast right now, where we talk about people in our networks and what they're doing and what's on their minds. So thanks for being here, and send my regards to everyone in India that I know, your family and the wines and beyond.
Will do. Yep. It's been great talking with you again.
Yeah, you too.